that, and then we'll call the meeting to order at 6:05 p.m. Sorry, guys, we're a few minutes late. First item on the agenda is additions or deletions to the agenda. Does anybody have any additions or deletions?
I noticed that the financials were not on there, but we have the documents.
Yeah, so the financials, we can add that. I just went over, so my question had been, we voted in the beginning of the year to have people who can sign if there's not a board meeting so bills can get paid. And when you sign it, that approves it. So I think unless, I asked if we send those out, unless there's any questions about anything on there, then that's just notifying you those were the approved warrants. So if you have a question about it, then we'll add it to the agenda. But if everybody's good and nobody has any questions, then I don't see any reason. They've already been approved. They don't need to be voted on again.
Okay, I don't have any questions, so.
Okay. So if everybody's good, then I guess we will move on. Thank you, everybody, for coming. We're going to go to members of the public and members of staff. Anybody like to speak on any item, we'll allow you to. This is your time to do it. Just be aware that action may not be able to be taken immediately, and that written correspondence prior to a board meeting always allows the board to be more prepared. So if you have a comment, we'll be able to thank you for your input, but we may not be able to act on it. So from the public, is there anybody that'd like to make a comment? And I think Mark had straightened this out. Number 9 will allow you to raise your hand or just unmute yourself. Okay, seeing nobody from the public. I see we do have a few.
I think Shannon had her hand up.
Oh, Shannon did. I'm sorry, Shannon. I'm really sorry about that. Wherever you are, I don't see.
That's all right, Rich.
Oh,
I just want to thank the Dover school staff and families for supporting Girl Scout cookie sales. So it's that time of year, and I lead the Dover troop. We have chosen to say no to booth sales this year, which is when we sell at like 7-Eleven or Walmart, to keep our girls and our schools safe. So we just want to thank everybody. We had a meeting this afternoon updating them on their sales, and we just want to say thank you to everybody who's answered one of our girls' calls or messages, and thank you for your support.
hey, Shannon, I would love some cookies too. So, I don't have any Girl Scouts. So can you send me an email and let me know what you got left, and I'll be helping you out?
I will. I know that your wife likes trefoils.
Okay. Well, I get Thin Mints for Mom too. And Laura and Mark and all of us that have bodies built by cookies. So thank you. Is there anybody? Yeah, Matt too. Tammy's being she's like looking the other way so we don't pick on her. So is everybody good from members of the public? Mark, it look good?
Yep, no hands up now.
Okay, so I do see a couple members of the staff, I believe, Lori and Jennifer, and I don't know if there's anybody else. You guys have any comments?
Well, I just wanted to comment, but it's an item on the agenda. So is now the time I should speak about what I'd like to, or do I wait till it comes up in the agenda? That's what I'm.
It's totally up to you. If it's an agenda item, we always give people the ability to do that. Some boards don't, so that's why there. But I have no problem letting you speak it to an agenda item if you want.
I guess I'd like to talk about the website, but I don't mind waiting until it comes up.
Okay. I'll make sure, I'm going to write myself a note to make sure we recognize you for that.
Thank you.
Okay. If there's nothing else, the next thing on the agenda, Peter, is the review and approve the minutes of the January 25th, 2021 meeting. Would somebody like to make a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Okay, so Mark moved. Do I have a second?
I'll second Rick.
Okay, Rick seconds it. Mark, any comments, discussion as the motion maker? You get first dibs.
Yeah, I've got 5 or 6 small things. Under members of the public, Joe Mahan was there also, and he's not listed.
Spelling, please.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Spelling.
Mahon. Mahon.
Ready?
First name.
Joe.
Thank you.
On page 2, paragraph 4, the one that says there was discussion. That was, the discussion was about towards the end of that first line requiring informational meetings, 2 informational meetings, not just 2 meetings. On the very last paragraph of that same page, the first line, it's not a town meeting, it's a school district meeting. On page 3, the third to last paragraph, when we're talking about the money that's been committed towards the coalition, it was $500 by Marlboro and $3,000 committed by Burlington. Not of the, I don't know what the planned total expenditure is. And on page 5, the fourth to last paragraph, just missed a C in my last name. And on page 6, under next meeting, it's a little late, but we did not have a February 1st meeting planned. That's it.
And for
You all good, Mark? Rick, you have anything? I would say that he doesn't. So all those in favor, or any other comments from anybody else, board or public? No. Okay, all those in favor of the minutes as amended by Mark, please signify so by saying aye.
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 It appears as though the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Thank you, Peter. You're all set with the corrections from Mark?
yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Peter.
Rich,
Yes.
before we move on, can we get a couple people to let us know what their names are? Sue?
Newman.
Okay, that's easy. We had someone named Camera, but they seem to have left. So never mind.
Okay. And then I had correspondence. I had none. Bill or Matt or Tammy, were you aware of any correspondence? Now I don't know where Matt went. Oh, Matt's still there. No. Sue, Tammy, you have anything? Oh, you have something, Bill?
No, I'm just waving to say, making sure I get my order locked down.
Oh, okay. If there's no correspondence, we're going to move over to financials. The first thing I had here was school district annual meeting. So last meeting, we had an interesting meeting discussing when we can meet. We actually decided at last year's school district meeting to move our meeting to, I believe it was April 18th. No, it was April 13th. And this year's meeting is in Wardsboro. I'd like to propose so the Secretary of State has made it capable for us to move our meeting. And I'm usually not somebody who wants to go against the voters, but last March we did not. If last March at the meeting when we discussed when we're going to have our vote, if we had said to people, there's not going to be any meetings, there's not going to be any live fan, there's not going to be the stadium full at Super Bowl, and that after the middle of March, all your kids are going to be home doing schooling from home, and they're not going to be back in the school building, you guys would have probably looked at me like I had 7 heads, and you guys probably would have voted me out as your chair, and I probably would have been somewhere, with a straight jacket on in a padded room. But things have changed a lot. I'd like to, and I don't feel we have to have a vote on it right now, but I would really like to suggest that we not decide for a period of time whether or not we're going to have a live meeting, one, and number two, when we have the meeting, because I'm going to try to propose that we don't have the meeting in the middle of April, maybe the end of April or the beginning of May. And the reason I'm proposing this is, if you think back a couple weeks ago when Lori Garland was kind of bouncing some proposed tax rates around with us, they looked really, really bad. And then last meeting, they looked quite a bit better. And until really the people in Montpelier get done doing what they do, and until we know what the federal government's going to do and how much money is going to flow in, things can change a lot. So I'm not sure, and I did vote to create a tie to not have a, not pass them, to have a ballot vote. And I don't know if we maybe have to have an Australian ballot vote, or I don't know if we can have a live meeting, but a lot can change in the next 2 months or so. And I'd like to see, and I don't believe we need a vote right now, but I'd like to ask the board if you guys are willing to give me a little leeway and to let's postpone any decisions about an actual town meeting date, and also a whether we do a ballot vote or a live vote until at least the first meeting in March, and maybe even the second meeting in March. And even if we do it the second meeting of March, which is March 15th, it still gives us 30 days if we want to. It doesn't give us 30 days, I'm sorry. It would be, we wouldn't be able to do that, but at least the first meeting in March, we could have another discussion. And I think if we can, the further we can put the decision off, the better decision we can make. And so again, I don't know how or what we'll be able to do, but I do think we'll have a better feel in another month or two. You know, the positivity rate's down to 1.8% as of today. There are vaccines going around, but yes, there are other strains coming in. I know Wardsboro and Dover both committed to in-person town meetings, but they're putting theirs off. At least Dover voted for May. I think Wardsboro, I don't know if they set a date yet, but I think I heard somewhere maybe, I think Tammy said something maybe in May. Is there anybody who feels strongly that we need to either A, stick with that date, or B, make a decision tonight or the next meeting in February? Go ahead, Mark.
You know where I stand on this, and I don't see any reason to put it off. I think that people deserve to have the right to have a date established. Dover did establish their date of May 18th. Is that right, Andy? 13th. Okay. Which would be, Shannon's shaking her head. But that would be too late for us to be able to warn a second vote, should it be necessary, before having to turn our budget into the state. So I don't think.
So Mark, can I address those two concerns?
Yeah.
So here's the other thing that's happened. I feel if we have an in-person meeting, we're going to have a positive vote. It may not be the budget we present, but very rarely does a budget get voted down when it's a live vote, because you compromise and people have a discussion and you come up with a number that works for everybody. It may not be the number we wanted. It may be higher, it may be lower, but we can usually hash out a number. And if we decide to do an Australian ballot vote, Bill checked, and I believe I sent this to Andy, and Andy was okay with it too. We can do less than 10 days on a revote, and maybe May 13th isn't the right day, or May 18th, or whatever day we choose. But I'd like to just put it off. And I think, Mark, I totally agree with you. To me, I loved it when town meeting was the first meeting, and Tuesday in the school district was. Again, these aren't normal times, and I just think that we're doing a disservice to people because we don't know what it's going to be like out 3 months down the road. So But go ahead, I cut you off, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I don't think things are going to change enough that things aren't going to change enough with the course of the pandemic in a month to make a different decision. That's all.
Anybody else from the board? Go ahead, Laura, and then Tammy.
I would love it if we could, well, I guess we can't do it at the same time as the town. I actually prefer that we wait as long as possible, as long as we possibly can to consider doing an in-person meeting. And it's possible that we're going to get to as long as we possibly can wait and say we cannot do an in-person meeting. So, I mean, that's why I would like to wait as long as possible to just preserve that option for in-person. And I'm not, like if we had to vote for today for, it would be really hard for me to vote for in-person, but it may not be hard for me to vote for in-person for, beginning of May. But I don't know yet.
Okay, Tammy?
I just looked it up. It's May 22nd for Wardsboro. It's a Saturday.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board? And then I'll move over to public. Laura, you have another one? Mark, you have another one?
Just a question. What is our absolute final cutoff date that a decision has to be made by?
We
In
have
order-
to submit to the state of Vermont by May 30th, our budget. And if not, they just take a percentage of our previous year's budget.
We can still vote on a budget after that, but
Right, and sometimes they do change, but it's a lot more paperwork. I think by May 30th, we ought to be able to present something to the state.
so the initial warning has to be 30 days in advance, even if a revote is only 10.
Andy's shaking his head, and that's my understanding too, so.
So that would take us to April 30th as the last possible day that we could have a meeting.
April 30th is the last possible day to have a meeting?
April 30th, if it has to be in by May 30th. I'm sorry, April 30th would be the last possible day that we could warn a meeting and still have it in the month of May.
No, because, yeah, but we would have it like the 29th of May. Because you have a 30-day warning.
Right.
So what I'm hoping to do is sometime in March, just make a decision in March, which is 4 to 6 weeks away, and have a, plan a meeting for the end of April or the 1st of May. Because if we decide that we want to do an Australian ballot, the rewarn isn't as bad. And I'm not concerned about having an in-person meeting with being able to hammer out a budget. I think we would have a budget number voted on. Again, it may not be the number we like, but it would be a number.
Just remember,
Don't have a total vote down of a budget.
just remember that the course of this pandemic has changed in a matter of a couple of days at times. So choosing to have an in-person meeting is a risk, because things could change drastically and we'd have no control anymore.
Right. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to not have that discussion now. I'm trying to give it a little more time so people can think about it, so we can have a better understanding and also see what's out there. Vermont right now is vaccinated, I think 10 or 12% of its people. Maybe we have a better turnout with vaccinations. I just don't know. Things change daily almost, it seems like. Dwight, you're next, and then Kate.
Thanks, Rich. I certainly like the idea of having it in conjunction with the Wardsboro meeting. That's kind of historical for us, that we would have a meeting of the school board either the night before or the actual of the town meeting. So now that meeting's set, that would make for a fun weekend, I guess. So yeah, I also like that we'll have plenty of inclusion, because we need to have two virtual meetings prior to that too, right? We're required to do 2 informational meetings. So that's good. Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying too, Rich. I think, you know, we have a much better chance of approving the budget if it's done in person. We know that to be true as well. So, so obviously if our goal is to pass the budget, and I think that is, that would be helpful as well. But I understand the risks as well. So I guess my only question would be if we set a date in May but we're not, when do we have to decide whether do we decide the date first and then decide whether we do it in person or virtual, you know, following that? So we do it kind of 2-step?
Yeah, or it could be 3 steps. I mean, and again, you know, in March, we can decide the date. When we decide the date, I think we should decide whether it's going to be in person or a ballot vote. And I think we're going to need a lot of input from Andy either way, because he's the one that has to be responsible for the voting and stuff.
Yeah.
And he did find out, and he can speak to it, but he did find out the turnaround for the printing isn't as bad as he thought it may be. But again, too, you know, even though they say you can vote within 7 days by Australian ballot on a revote, I don't know if Andy could get the stuff together that quick. So my point is I don't think we need to make a decision tonight. I don't think we need to make a decision at the next meeting in February. I think it can at least be pushed off till March. And again, I just feel like our best move would be to put it off until at least till then, and then see what things are. I mean, we don't know. It may be there, like Mark said, you know, there may be some new variant out there that the vaccine doesn't work for, and you know, we could go up to, you know, we could see a huge peak in people contracting disease, and it would be very easy for us all to vote in favor of an Australian ballot. I don't know. Like I've always said at town meeting, if I could predict the future, I wouldn't be here. I'd be playing the futures market, and I'd be on my tropical island with my harem. So, are you good, Dwight?
Yeah, thanks, Rich.
Kate?
So I had a question on the timing. So, you know, it's due to the state on May 30th. What is the turnaround time that needs to happen after the approval for, you know, is it staff that then submits it to the state? So what is the turnaround time, and what does that process look like?
I mean, Lori's here, but we used to get together back when we did our own budgets in Dover. We always waited till the end of May, and like the day before, it's a form they fill out, and I believe they submit it electronically. So Lori, a couple days.
Yeah, I would just need a day. That's fine.
A day, okay. Just making sure that that was a factor that we all put into consideration, the turnaround times.
No, and you know, again, I'm sorry, you know, some of the stuff it's like second nature to me, so I don't think of that other people haven't been through that, so they don't know that. Andrew, sir.
Yeah, so I like your plan. If you decide to do an Australian ballot, 6 weeks would be ideal. If you could give me 6 weeks notice. And that would mean a warning, a signed final version of the warning to make the ballot. And I wanted to bring up one other thing. So you have 2 open slots, 2 directors from Wardsboro will be voting on this year. And remind me, which 2 directors slots are those?
Kate has a 2-year term. She was voted in to fill she was appointed by the board to fill a 3-year spot, so she'll have 2 years left of her spot.
She's got 2 years left. Okay.
Right. And then is it Dwight or Rick? Dwight. No, Rick. Dwight.
Yeah, it's
Dwight.
Isn't there a spot? Isn't there a spot in Dover as well? Aren't you up for re-election?
Yeah, no, and I'm up for election in Dover.
So my question would be, Kate and Dwight, are you folks running for your slots? Yes.
That was a long pause.
It's all right,
yeah.
Dwight. No pressure.
Yeah, Yeah.
Was that a yes, Dwight?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, awesome. That
Take-
makes
take
our
the
life
Last
a
I
lot
can tell you,
easier.
Brian. Yeah.
If it comes to an Australian ballot, if you have a slot with nobody running, you wind up with a bunch of write-ins, and that would make a hellish election night. So that helps. Otherwise, I have nothing to add, just that, that warning is key, ideally 6 weeks prior to the date that you choose. I would ask this as well, that you think about the question not only of whether it's going to be an Australian ballot or an in-person meeting, or what the date of that meeting will be, but you also think about whether you would like to mail ballots to all voters preemptively, because you can make that decision. If you don't, if you just have an Australian ballot, then per statute, folks call and request an absentee ballot. It's a huge difference logistically. And I would strongly recommend that you don't do that. And I can convey Jackie, the town clerk in Wardsboro's feelings that we don't do that. She's strongly opposed to it for her own reasons. But whatever arguments I've made against Australian ballot for a budget vote would go doubly against mailing ballots to all voters. It just invites people not to participate in the whole process and simply participate in that little last bit. And that's my 2 cents on that. But please think about that. When you make your decisions, you'll need to also make that decision as well.
So Andy, I plan on, and I hope to, obviously it's a 3-step or it's 2 or 3 steps. So our first step is, in person or not. And then once that decision is made, then if it's going to be Australian ballot, then let's cross those bridges at that time, if that's okay. And then your comment that 6 weeks for an Australian ballot idea. What about for an in-person meeting? What would be your drop dead date for that?
A month. Just
because, again, if we decide to go in person and then there needs to be for some reason a revote, or we did a procedure wrong, we'll want enough time to warn that. So we could actually make the decision on the same day, just knowing that if we decide to do Australian ballot, we want to push the date for the ballot out 2 more weeks than a live meeting.
Okay, I didn't follow that, but if it's clear in your brain, then we're all.
Yeah, where I'm going is like, let's say on May 1st or April 1st, we decide to have, we make our decision. If we're
April 1st, you make a decision. Yep.
Say April 1st, then 6 weeks later is when we want to have the ballot vote. If we decide on April 1st to go live meeting, then we could set it at, May 1st, where if it's a ballot, we'll probably want to send it like May 15th or something.
Yep.
And then we could still have a revote either way before the end of the month.
Okay, and did you check that revote business about the 10 days? Because I did not.
Yes.
Okay.
Bill requested that of the school district attorney.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, we double checked that. It's 7 days, actually.
Awesome. Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, it says less than 10 days. So, still, yes. I thought I forwarded this to you. Didn't I, Andy? The email from the attorney?
I didn't see it. I might have missed it.
I will send it to you again. Or I'll send it to you if I didn't. Mark, are you all set, Andy?
I am.
Okay, Mark, go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, Andy, what's the turnaround time to get ballots printed? So, what's the turnaround time?
Okay, so our printer, or the printer that I'd like to use, said he could do it in a week. That seems crazy to me, but now, if we nail this down, you know, it might vary a little bit in the process. But if we go with this one particular vendor and we decide to mail them to everybody, they claim, and this is the vendor the state used in November, same vendor, they claim they can get them in the mail in a week. Now, that requires you to have a signed final warning and give me enough time to create a ballot out of that and get it to them. But, you know, that's pretty darn good. That's pretty fast.
That's
But
really
we're still,
fast.
you asked for 6 weeks anyway, so you'll have plenty of time.
I asked for 6 weeks. I don't know when you're gonna do your thing. You know, when Dover's town meeting plays into my workload and my ability to do what you need me to do. So I asked for 6 weeks so that I can guarantee you everything will be done according to statute. I could push that, but then you know, maybe I can't deliver.
Yeah, Andy, again, I think when we make that decision, you know, you'll definitely know about it. If you can be there, you'll be there. But I don't see an issue with being able to give you 6 weeks either.
Cool.
You know, especially if the decision is to go by ballot, you know, we'll want to push it out. We can push it out too a little further than if we go live, because we still have that time frame in there to be able to have a revote. More concerned about a revote on a ballot than I am about a revote on a in-person meeting.
Cool.
Mark, you go ahead.
If the revote has to be by ballot, how far in advance do the ballots have to be in the hands of voters before the due date or the election date?
So typically for a meeting, it's 20 days, okay? But if you can get a meeting warned within 7 days, then I'm guessing that's also a shortened time frame. What we're talking about, because you're not going to mail ballots to every voter at that point. So it's something I can do in-house, and it's a one-question ballot. I can crank that out in a couple hours, you know?
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So unless I see an overwhelming demand from everybody that we make a decision tonight, I think we're going to push it off. I don't see any major objections, so.
I'll pass it off, Rich, for a little while. I think it's a hot subject.
Okay,
Everybody else,
so we're all good, right?
I'm good.
Is there anybody that's not good? Okay, Kate, Dwight, you're good. Laura's shut her picture off. Mark, I know you're not good, but you okay? Or you're okay, but
I'm okay. I'm okay. I just don't agree.
okay. Lori is somewhere still here. She's bouncing around. Lori, Matt, myself, and Tammy all met. We didn't meet. When I say met, we were on. I don't even know. Did we do a TV thing like this, or did we do it on phone? But we talked. We Googled. We talked about the capital budget. So one of the things that happened is, you know, after we formed this new district, it was a little weird because we had money coming from Dover, we had money coming from Wardsboro. We had to start Dover. We had a little issue with our audits. We didn't exactly know what we had. We had a reserve study done by an engineering firm. Dwight was kind of spearheading that a little bit for us with the engineer. And then, you know, we had COVID again, and I hate to use COVID as our excuse all the time. But, you know, we spent a lot of meetings and a lot of time in meetings discussing, you know, whether we're going to be live or Memorex. And so we've got a pretty decent budget, and I think everybody's agreed, and we're in like the budget we have. But in looking at capital budgeting, we did find that the plan, the engineer, and I had not looked at this close, so this is all my fault. But there's just as an example, and I kept bringing this up, and Matt and Tammy are going to shake their heads. There was a thing in the Wardsboro building that there was a broken window for $300. And I'm like, that's not a capital item. That's a maintenance item. That's a repair item. So we actually had a little bit of a discussion, and remembering that Lori is a real financial wizard. We had a discussion about what really is a capital expenditure. And then that made us actually look at, in the capital plan that the engineering firm did, a lot of that stuff was more maintenance stuff. And then I don't know if you remember, there was a couple things in there about like maintenance on the HVAC system that was suggested when Chris Medina took over. And one of the things that was strange about that is, like, you know, the Wardsboro building is maybe a third of the size of the Dover building, maybe 40%. But it's definitely not half the size, but yet the prices are 50%. You know, the Dover, they're recommending 10,000, but in Wardsboro, they're recommending 5. So is Dover low or is Wardsboro high? You know, we don't know. And there's a lot of stuff that was done and some other stuff that should be maintenance. And, you know, in discussing it with Lori, she was like, you know, really the number, there's a number like 5,000 we should use. So what I'd like to do is, and again, because we pushed this meeting out, I think we're going to try to, if it's okay with the board, I'd like to, we're pretty well set in the operational budget. I think there needs to be some adjustments made in the maintenance line items. We may need to add more maintenance, and we may need to run a higher building maintenance budget every year to cover a lot of things that that were identified in the capital plan, but are not really capital items that should just be maintenance items. And I think also that Matt and Tammy had put together with Lori and Chris Medina, you know, kind of a list of things that need to be fixed or should be updated. Like there's countertops in Matt's building, and Tammy's got some painting to do. So if it's okay with everybody, what I'd like to do is form a small subcommittee, and I'd like to have in the beginning of March, maybe meet with Lori. I think it's Scott's the new Chris. Greg, I'm sorry. Meet with Lori, Greg, Matt, Tammy, myself, and I didn't know because Dwight, I don't think you're on any other committee right now. I don't know if you'd help us, if you would join us with that, since you did have the engineering study done, and let us kind of flesh this out a lot better. And also, one of the things that the plan didn't have was, and those of you from Dover, you know, I used to do a capital sheet that showed just not everything that's going to be spent, but, you know, how much was beginning of the year, how much we were contributing that year, what we had for expenditures, and then what the ending balance was, so that, you know, remember that a capital plan is supposed to allow for level funding. So like if we do a roof on both buildings in the same year, you know, we're not upping the tax rate 50 cents to cover 2 roofs. Next year we have nothing, the tax rate drops 50 cents. There's nothing that angers voters and taxpayers more. You know, they like some consistency. So we do have the 2 reserve funds. We do have a starting balance. And Lori has agreed to help us work on this and to make it a little bit, at least let us look and see what we should be doing the funding at. And again, you know, we may not always fund exactly a balanced amount across, but there may be some years that we say, hey, look, you know, there, a lot of secondary students graduated, not as many 6th graders are moving into 7th grade this year. So maybe we take, you know, instead of cutting the tax rate by, you know, 10 cents, maybe we cut it by 5 cents and put an extra 5 cents this year into the reserve budget. And also understanding too, that just because we identified in the engineering study that both buildings needed a new roof this year, well, as long as the money's there, and if the roof contractor comes out and says, this roof looks like it's in really good shape, let's push it 5 years down the road. You know, we're only asking the voters to vote on the capital budget for that year. But if 2 years down the road, all of a sudden the roof just blows off the building, we do have funds in there that would cover it to repair it. So if nobody has a huge issue, I'd like to put off discussion on the capital budget funds And the items up for discussion, that list that Matt and Tammy and Lori and Chris and Greg put together. And let's have a discussion about that in the first meeting in March, where I think we can be much better prepared for you all. And I'd like to have this little subcommittee, if it's okay with everybody.
It sounds good, Rich. I'll be happy to be part of it.
Okay. Kate and then Mark.
So I'm reading on the agenda where it says March 1st budget approval deadline. Is that something that we need to pay attention to no?
No,
Okay.
because we decided to push the type of meeting off. So I
Okay.
think we don't have to do that now. Mark, are you good, Kate? I'm sorry.
Yep.
Okay, Mark, go ahead, sir.
Well, sort of a logistical question. Can a maintenance budget be voted on as a separate article? I'm not saying I want that, but I'm just asking whether it could be.
Yeah, we can move anything out and make it a special article we want. We control what we make or what the agenda is.
Okay.
I would just warn you that that's not usually something the voters are used to seeing capital budgets. And again, remember last meeting I asked Rick Thorpe about the reserve budgets in a spreadsheet and stuff, and he said he hadn't seen it. But remember, the Dover voters are used to seeing that because that's something we always did in the past. So at least half the voters are used to it. And I kind of liked it a little better. And I did ask Lori about it. And Lori, I didn't know if maybe it wasn't a really common accounting thing. And Lori's okay with it. So I think we can work something that everybody's going to be happy with. You know, Lori from the business office, the administrators, the board, and it'll be easy for the board to be able to explain, you know, where the numbers are coming from. Got off topic on you, but yeah, you can.
That's okay.
Now, we could vote every article separate. You know, we could vote every line on them as a separate article. Just Dr. Backus will probably shoot us because the meeting will be forever.
And if we pulled that or something else out, it would still be counted towards education spending, though.
Yeah, when the form that Lori fills out to send to the state, there's the budget that you vote, and then there's like several little lines for special articles approved.
Okay.
Like some years we voted in Dover to fund the capital budgets out of reserve money. So we never raised taxes. So that didn't have to get reported. The only thing that got reported was what we voted for articles that we're going to raise and appropriate for.
Okay, thank you.
Lori, you want to comment? Are you all set or?
No, I was just going to comment to Mark that on the 3-year comparison that I sent to you, it has, you can see where it has at the top of it, separate articles. So.
And the 3-year comparison, that's still required by law, right? That we have to supply that.
It needs to go into the report, yes.
Right. And that was part of Act 60 and Act 68 to show how we spend the taxpayers' money. So if everybody's good with that, Dwight, congratulations. You just got railroaded again. Okay, if we're good on those then, Lori, maybe you can just send an email out with some day that, maybe Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, that first week of March to Dwight, myself, Tammy, Matt, Bill, and Greg. And then we'll set up a time. And I do, if we want to try to do an in-person meeting for that, because it's easier to do graphs, or at least maybe you and I could be together or something. We can use the firehouse, or we can use my office, or something over your way if it's more convenient for you. Just let me know.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Dwight.
Rich, it's Rick. During this, are you going to actually come up with a number that we're going to put in for capital for each year then?
Yeah, so what it does.
Part of that process?
Yeah, it shows, what the capital contribution should be, or the annual contribution. But again, we may need to adjust that because, this year we have $500,000 or $300,000 increase in that secondary, which is is the reason things are going up. And we do have 200,000 that we did assign to it from last year. So we're not starting with nothing. So that's why I really want Lori to look at it with us and, you know, I can throw some numbers together, but all my formulas don't work right. And then
I totally get it. I just wanted to know if we were going to come up with an annual contribution
no, that's what we need to do.
or recommend one.
Right, and that would be a separate article. So that kind of goes back to your question, Mark. Usually funding a reserve fund is a special article. That's not usually included in the operating budget. But then Lori has to add that because that's a special article that was voted if we're going to raise and appropriate the money from the, you know, through taxes. So if we're all good, then let's move on to website discussion, possible action. I know Jennifer, you want to talk, but let me just start this with this has been something we've been discussing since River Valley Unified School District was a non-operating dream pie in the sky. Mark has done a few times for us, sent out some RFPs. So I think the $30,000 number is a pretty good number if that's something we want to do. And again, it is a possible action. We can have discussion. If you folks feel strongly that that's something that should be in the budget, then we can help, you know, we can add that into the calculations. That's again, something that could be a special article if we wanted it to be and let the voters decide. It's something we can just add into the operational budget. I don't believe it would be a capital expenditure, but, you know, let Lori and the Dwight group, you know, discuss that. And maybe we can kind of give you some guidelines as to what's capital and what isn't. And it's open for discussion. Mark, I will let you go first, sir. First hand up.
So my only comment, and it's actually something that, Rich, I don't remember if you said at the last meeting or maybe you said it to me at some other time, but at this point, if we want people to respond to an RFP, and we're going to have to put out a new one because the last one we did was a year ago, we need to actually have them in the budget. Otherwise, people aren't going to want to answer the RFPs anymore. So.
Yeah, I think my comment is people aren't going to take us seriously if it's the third or fourth time we've asked them for stuff and we haven't done anything. So
yeah,
I definitely agree that we've got a good number now, because at one time we put like 10,000 in there and we had a discussion whether that was enough or not. Well, we know it isn't now. So I think that's a good moving forward point.
I think, Lori, I apologize. You answered this for me last meeting and I forgot. 30,000 is a couple of pennies on the tax rate.
Right. That's
okay.
That's
I could be talked out of it, but I think my recommendation would be to have it in not a separate article, but as part of the budget.
Okay. You all set, sir?
I'm good. Yes.
Anybody else like to weigh in? Lori? Oh, okay.
Nope,
I'm sorry.
okay.
Anybody else?
This is Rick. I mean, I just don't feel as though it's an educational expense, and I don't feel like it's something that we should be doing this year, especially with the budget going up so much. A couple of cents is a couple of cents. I really haven't been enthusiastic endorser of this from the beginning, so probably not the best person to ask on the board. But in general, I just don't feel as if it's that it's an educational expense. I believe it's a business development expense. If we're trying to get more people to move into town and help realtors out, I get that, but I just don't think that it's an educational expense. It's just my personal opinion.
Thank you, Rick. Jennifer, nobody else is jumping, so I'll come back to you, Mark, and then Laura and Jennifer. Go.
Shannon has her hand up. That's all.
Who? Oh, I'm sorry. Then not only that, but they jumped to the upper left-hand corner screen. They bumped you over, Mark. Jennifer.
Yes, thank you. I guess, yes, I've been wrestling with this $30,000 addition, or whether it's an addition or just item into the budget. And I'm feeling kind of, as Rick said, that money to me is not equitable to the students in our building. Wardsboro, we have counted our pennies. Our website is current. I'm not saying it doesn't need an update or some new design, and somebody with that capacity, that's not me. And but everything we do, we add to it. People look at it. The out-of-staters that moved to Wardsboro, they looked at our website. They saw through our website. I definitely feel there should be some type of link that links, that has the River Valley's board minutes that we don't have access really to otherwise. I would love to have some type of link on our current website, but I just feel in a year of exactly that, where our expenses are high, we have had an influx of secondary students. I'm not seeing the need to spend the 30,000. I'm just seeing, I feel we could spend it otherwise. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Jennifer. I think I said Laura next, and then Mark, or Mark, you were just telling me Shannon wanted to be on, right? Then Shannon.
Yeah, I would support moving this forward. Maybe doing, we could probably do half of it, having it as a separate article. I think that in terms of just our community, it's a community development piece, really, that can be helpful in terms of maintaining our school populations, providing better showcasing of what's happening in our schools. We live and die by our student body populations, right? So, the more that we are able to showcase and provide that information, I think the better off we are. I hear that Wardsboro has maintained their website, but we are one district also. Part of this is also a rebranding, and definitely sensitive to the tax increases this year. And so definitely think that we could, I think that there are ways to stage this, and I think that number is thinking that we're doing a lot of rich content on their videos and other things. So I think, no, really.
Nope, that's structure. We provide the content.
Okay.
Video production, professional video production would cost, well, Rich might be able to answer this question better than I, but would be a lot, excuse me, I cut myself off, would be a lot more expensive.
Well, is there a way to stage it, do you think, Mark?
I think so. The way to stage it is to have the budget approved for the full amount and then stage it with our contractor. It's going to be hard to get a contractor involved if we've only allocated half the funds or a third of the funds, unless, I mean, I think, and Matt might be able to help me with this, I think, and I can't remember his name, Bliss Tech, would probably be a lot more willing to do it than almost any other contractor, since he already works in the district. But we'd still have to get a RFP from him.
I'm also I prefer not to, but I'm also willing to, move this into next year. I think we've moved it several times.
Just remember, it takes 6 months to a year of development.
No, yep, I understand that. And I would really be happy with bringing it to the voters and, having the voters say, nope, we don't want to do that this year. That would be my preference, really. But if the board felt strongly enough that that's a need, that it's a need to fix it.
Laura, remember too, if we don't put it in this year's budget, the earliest we would have the money is July of 2022.
Yeah.
So I think we could probably get,
Mark, are you responding to Laura? Because I think I had Shannon before you.
I'm sorry, Shannon, go ahead. I've got to do
And
math in
then
my head.
I'll come
anyway.
back to you, Mark.
Thank you. So nobody likes to spend money on websites, right? We get it. It's very expensive. As a parent and as somebody in the community, I think it's something that we do need. I've looked at both of our school sites. I've referenced them for a lot of things. But at the same time, having just completed the RFP process for the Town of Dover's website, we received quite a lot of responses. We had 55 responses to our RFP, and our budget was half of that. And we were able to find someone. Granted, we were looking at mostly municipal specialists, but I'm sure there are just as many people eager to provide our district with a website for under 15,000, which we were able to find. So I do think it's important. I don't know that you should push it another year because it will really fall into another year after that. And I know it does take some time. Everyone we spoke to was within 4 to 6 months to get our site up, but it might be a little bit different. But I understand the pushback and the feeling that it's just not necessary. I've heard it for a year now that we didn't really need a new website, and it feels like a frivolous thing. But I think more and more of us are looking to have something more centralized where we can find everything and understand that we are one brand together, which you don't see right now. But, you know, we did, I don't remember all of the places we posted our requests for proposals, but we did receive over 50 of them. So it feels like we should be able to adjust that number a little bit if needed. But I do think you should include it in this year's budget.
Thank you, Shannon. Mark, can I, if you don't mind, give me 1 second. We're all done with the financial stuff. Does anybody need Lori for anything else? Because I promised her I'd get her off as quick as I could. Because I gave her extra meetings with the capital stuff. So is everybody good? Okay, Lori, thank you so much. And yeah, send that email out to the group and we'll try to set something up. And Bill, we want to make sure that gets warned because that's in a subcommittee of the board.
You got it.
Okay, thank you, Lori. Have a good one. Go ahead, Mark, it's your turn.
So I don't remember how many responses we got. Shannon, I would definitely be interested in finding out where you posted. We did get responses from a number of companies that did municipal websites. 30,000 was the low end. Where most of the other proposals were looking 60, 80,000, which were not surprising numbers to me based on what we were asking for. I don't think we're going to get a website that is worth our money at 15,000. To be honest, I think it will be a relatively static site that isn't going to have room for growth, isn't going to have a backbone of data structures that we need to have room for growth. Whether we can do it in two $15,000 budget line items or articles depends on the contractor. Yeah, and I get the financial aspect of it, that it's especially this year that it's hard, but I think most years we're going to be able to say that this is a bad year to do it. So it's a matter of pulling the lever and doing it. And you'll have to excuse me for a minute. If I don't let the dog out, she's going to bite my leg off.
Turn the volume up high, Mark, so you can hear.
Sure.
Okay. Tammy or Matt, you know, I'd really like you guys to weigh in. And Bill, if you want to give us any words of wisdom too, wherever you're down the corner. And if you don't want to weigh in, Matt or Tammy or Bill too, that's fine also.
Go ahead, Tammy.
I'm good.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to weigh in too heavily. I'm a big believer in promoting the excellence of the schools that we have and making communications as easy as possible for parents and community members and people finding us. Rick and I had a really nice conversation about whether this is education funding or this is community development. I think that's a very valid point. So I don't have any words of advice. I just know that we have a really good product of 2 excellent schools within one school system. And I'm always wanting to encourage the ability to communicate that out, not only to our own community, but to people looking for us. But the timing and the investment, I will defer to the board on whether that is the right time to do that and how to do that.
Sure. You know, I'm torn because of my feet in both sides. You know, from the tech perspective, I appreciate and understand the importance and the value. I think as a communication tool, it's doing, you know, it's doing great things. It's getting information out. At the same time, as a school administrator, I'm going, $30,000. What could I do with that to improve student learning? And that that scares me a little bit. So I'm not able to offer much clarity except for you to know that you know, we're with you. This is a tough decision. I know any kind of funding situation is tough. I agree with Bill. I agree with Rick. I agree with Laura. I agree with Mark. I mean, there's everybody's got the right argument here. It's just going to be a matter of, I think, like Laura said, maybe taking it to the public and seeing if this is something they want to invest in. But, you know, Rick's point is valid too. Maybe this is really more of an economic development investment. I don't know for sure. I think it's something worth talking about.
Thank you, Matt. Tammy, you good? Okay. If everybody's kind of set for a second, I'd like to make some comments, and I don't always like to comment on things. I'd like to let things just kind of go forward. But I will say, I guess I was hoping that from Matt or Tammy or Bill, they would say something like, yeah, this is really needed to help our students, because that's what we're supposed to be focusing on. If this is a marketing tool to get people to move to Dover and Wardsboro and attend our schools, we did a damn good job of it, guys. We're spending an extra $300,000 on secondary education with our static website. It's working well. Oh, and by the way, guys, we're going to become a victim of our own success, because remember that we vote a higher secondary number out. So people get $18,789 to attend Burton. And we get reimbursed from the state for a secondary student. How much? 12 or 13,000. When we wind up getting a whole bunch of secondary students in here, where can we make reductions, or where can we kind of keep the tax rate from going crazy? The elementary schools. Very little we control in the elementary schools. You know, most everything is contracted. So I think we really need to think, why are we doing this? And I have no problem giving it to the voters. I've always said, you know, the voters will tell us what's right, you know, and I think I disagree. The one thing I disagree with Mark is I think it would be great to have a newer website, a more dynamic one, and one that people can look at. But I also think that the voters will tell us if that's the right move, you know, and Shannon, you can stand up and, you know, give your perspective. Jennifer gives her perspective, and the people will vote and tell us. Or maybe they'll say, hey, 30,000 isn't right, Mark, let's just give them 15 this year. Or the voters have done this in the past and said, you know what, town's spending $60,000. How are you guys doing one for 30? I want to amend that motion to 60,000. You know, we don't know what's going to happen. But so I'm kind of a little up in the air, but again, it's not a decision we need to make tonight. If by straw poll you guys feel that it would be okay as a special article, then we just put in a special article and we can argue the amount later. If you want to add it into the budget, we would have to make a decision by next meeting. I don't know if you're ready to make a decision tonight, but again, I don't think there is a reason to push a decision right tonight. And the only other thing, and again, I'll maybe let Lori leave a little too early. You know, if you guys remember with Act 60, some things got moved. The town took care of some stuff for us. The town has always plowed the yard, and they took our trash, and they worked on our buses, and we got fuel there. And, you know, nobody's ever said anything to us. The town of Wilmington did say, they did make a motion at a town meeting to move $1 million or $2 million from the town budget into the school budget. And they pretty much got their hands slapped. And I always said it was a difference between, you know, lighting a firecracker versus, you know, sending off an atomic bomb. And, you know, the other thing is, if the town's going to be doing some upgrades on the website, isn't it be possible that we incorporate something with the school and maybe save ourselves some money? Maybe if they're doing both the town and the school. And again, I would really defer to Shannon and Mark on that, because I'm not a technology person, but maybe that's something we can discuss offline, Mark, between you and Shannon over the next, or Eric, I think the other economic person. And maybe next meeting we could, you know, maybe come up with another number that does what you guys want to do. And, but maybe it's less. And so those are my thoughts, and I'm going to shut up now because Laura's got her hand up.
Well, just a question, Richard, I heard you say a straw poll. Is a motion not in order here to put this as a separately warned article?
No, because we would just do it and then we can vote on the article. I don't think it needs to be a motion. I think if we have agreement amongst the board how we want to proceed. So let me ask this. Out of the board, how many of you would be interested in seeing this happen, number one? And number two, if it were to happen, would you want it in the operating budget, or would you want it as a special article? So Mark, I'll let you go first, Laura, then you, Mark, Dwight. We'll go over to Kate and then Rick.
Yes, and I would like it as a separate article.
Mark?
Yes, and I'm fine with it being a separate article. And Shannon, I'd be happy to work with Shannon and see if we can do something.
I think it would probably be a question if we had a live meeting that somebody would ask. So if you could, Mark, that would be maybe good before the next meeting.
I was already planning on it, so yep.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Dwight?
Yeah, I mean, my question first, I think, you know, and listening to everybody here, I think this expense might meet the criteria of a capital expense. I mean, it's a one-time expense. It doesn't necessarily affect education, you know, learning that we're all talking about. So could this be considered a one-time expense that hits the capital budget, so that way it doesn't affect the tax rate?
Well, everything affects the tax rate, Dwight. Nothing doesn't.
Well, maybe so, but we have
So-
money in saved for capital, you know, and other expenses that we have saved. So it could hit in that respect, but it would be against the capital budget.
So-
not the-
I don't believe so. And again, I say things, but you guys are the power, so you guys can all outvote me. But
Yeah, because it is a one-time expense, so we're not.
Well,
we're not
hang
gonna
on.
push for it next year.
Hang on, Dwight. We set up a building reserve fund and we set up a vehicle reserve fund. I don't think that fits either reserve fund.
Well, you could argue building, but I think we do have a general fund as well, right?
That's just where the money comes in and goes out. So, yeah. So what it would be, Dwight, is it would be a separate article. And then what you would do is you would say, with the funding coming from any fund balance left at the end of the fiscal year. So what that does is that affects how much of the fund balance you can take to offset taxes if you want to. But yeah, you can definitely do that.
So those expenses that you're going to be discussing for the buildings, where would those be coming out of? Are they going to be the similar situation?
No, they're going to come out. They come out of the building reserve fund. That's why we.
Okay. I'm just trying to find a way to get. It seems like a capital expense to me. I'm trying to find a way to, other than having to fund it, so we could add funding into it from the capital reserve if it gets voted. In other words, if we have an article, could part of that article be to fund that expense from our general fund balance, the capital fund balance?
That's what I said. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. So what you would do is you would set the article up that sometimes in Dover we would set funding of the reserve fund for the transportation of the buildings to come from the general reserve fund. And then that way it's not being raised in taxes, so it doesn't affect the tax rate. But what it does do is it affects that reserve fund that doesn't have as much money anymore.
Got it. Yeah, I'd be in favor of that.
Okay, so basically you'd be in favor of a special article, but we'll work on the special article next, or after we get that. Kate, go
Yes.
ahead.
Yes, I definitely think that we should move forward with this, and I think a special article works well.
Rick?
I'm fine with the special article.
Okay, so why don't we plan on, and I'm gonna start roughing out the, I'll rough out what the articles will look like. You know, it's pretty easy from last few years. Mark, if you would be able to work with Shannon and maybe see if we should ask for a bigger number or lesser number. And do you want help with that group, or do you want somebody else to work with you on that? Or are you all good by yourself? Or does anybody want to work on it with Mark?
I was gonna say, if someone wants to work on it with me, that's fine. I don't know that we can get into an awful lot of detail at this point. But maybe just work on refining the RFP that we already have and see how it can match up with what the town is already planning on doing.
And we are required to put it out to bid, just so people understand too. We couldn't just give somebody or hire somebody to do it. You know, because there's I think it's anything over $10,000, but Bill or Lori would correct me. But it's neither here nor there. So we're all in agreement, straw poll that we add a special article for the website. The placeholder will be 30,000 for now, and we'll decide, Dwight, if we ask for that to come from reserves or be raised by taxes, and we'll figure that into the article. Go ahead, Mark.
Laura's hand is up. I don't know if that's old or
Oh.
new. I guess it's old.
Okay. Thank you for keeping track of this stuff for me, Mark, because I keep not noticing why people keep booting you and I down to the right one. Is there anything else under financials from anybody? See, now, Laura, you go way back down to the bottom. Okay, old business. Laura, waiting study implementation. Laura and Rick, do you want to give us any kind of updates?
I'll go first. I have no update.
That was easy. Go ahead, Laura.
We have H44 has been getting testimony. H54, which is my bill to implement the weights, has been getting testimony in the House. S13 is in the Senate Education Committee. That's Senator Bruce bill, looking to create a plan, an implementation plan for the weights. That has kind of stalled out so far. I think that my understanding is that a call to action has gone out late this afternoon to hear from districts. Okay, Mark is shaking his head. Good. Hear from districts to try and get things moving. And I have been working with JFO and the Ledge Council and others to make contingency plans in the event that this doesn't move, because of course we know there's an inequity. The legislature's been told there's an inequity. We have districts that are underweighted and being harmed, and we, just putting in place a plan is not going to actually remove the harm. So looking at temporary or shorter fixes, specifically around the excess spending penalty and what can be done there. I'm hopeful that we can get something done specifically with the weights this year. And there's a press conference, I believe, that's coming up. Maybe at the end of the week, next next week, there's discussion about a press conference. The sponsors of my bill met with lobbyists for the Burlington effort and the Southern Vermont rural effort. And I think that's it. I think that's what I got.
Mark, you were the only good boy who went to the selectmen's meeting the other day for the Dover Select Board. And I know they came up with a name. Can you just update everybody? I did get to the meeting, but I was late.
Yeah, you weren't feeling well because you got your shot or something.
Yeah, I felt really bad.
Yeah, so the Dover Select Board voted to sign a contract with Nick Krasson to provide lobbying support for this effort through the end of the current session for $20,000. And they anticipate having to extend that through the end of the biennium for a total of roughly $60,000. They voted to register with the state under the name of Educational Equity. Shannon, help me.
Equitable Education Advocates.
Thank you. So I want to first of all express my thanks to the Dover Select Board. It's a really important topic, and at this point, I think every ounce of energy that goes into lobbying and communicating with legislators is absolutely necessary. Dan French testified last week, essentially saying, "Don't rush this. Take your time." He didn't say do a study on a study, but that's more or less what he said. So we have to push people if we want to get this through. And Laura, you're correct. The coalition sent out an email from their lobbyist asking people to contact their senators and specifically the senators on the Senate Ed Committee to try to get them to take up S13. My understanding is from listening to Campion at some point was that they weren't planning on taking it up until they received something from the House. That they're taking up certain issues and the House is taking up certain issues and they're waiting for crossover. Yeah, anyway.
That's the back and forth game. I will, just to be fair, I will say that certainly our team here can attest that education is really hard right now. I mean, I don't think Tammy or Matt would argue with that, or Bill, and also really hard at AOE. And so, I have some sympathy for that. It's hard for us too. I have some sympathy for that. And I think that's some of what we're hearing from the secretary, that this is going to be hard and it's going to put pressure to put it in place. Nonetheless, we have kids who have been impacted for 20 years and I refuse. We cannot accept that it is okay for that to happen one more year. And so we have to push and try and find other paths for relief. So that's it. You're muted, Richard.
Yeah, thank you, Mark and Laura. And thank you, Select Board. The weighted study information group update, I think we're okay with that. Unless there's any other comments or thoughts. Go ahead, Mark.
Well, I don't know if we want to consider joining the coalition officially. It does not require a financial commitment at this point. They don't yet have a business structure to accept funds. They're still working on that, hopefully creating a 501c4, I believe. They so far have $6,500 pledged, 3,000 from Burlington, 3,000 from, give me a second, I'll tell you, and 500 from Marlboro. But we could join as an official member without pledging any money if we wanted. And if you're interested, the other 3,000 was pledged by Wyndham Southeast School District.
Is there any, Mark, you and Rick have been kind of following this. Do you guys feel that that would be appropriate at this time? Do you want to let them get a little more mature? Do we want to see what's going on elsewhere? What are your guys' thoughts?
I won't speak for Rick. Let him speak. I think that it would be inappropriate to pledge any finances at this point. You need to see what their structure is going to be. I don't think there's any downside to joining them, though, and adding another district to the list of districts that that they can essentially advertise as being a part of their coalition. I could go either way. I don't think there's necessarily any harm in in joining them now.
Rick?
I would agree with you, Mark. I don't think there's any harm in joining. I don't see any upside either, though, at this point in time, until they have a, coalesce type of structure to move forward. So I don't know. It seems like it's the theme of the meeting tonight, Rich, but my vote would be to kind of just wait and see for a few more meetings and see if they kind of coalesce around the subject. And if that subject's actually going to be something that we want to get behind.
And Rick, I think that's fine too, because I don't think it's, a couple weeks is going to make a lot of difference. My only concern would be, if they wind up having a totally different, there's been some discussion that maybe you fix this not with weights, but with categorical grants. And I am so dead set against them, because that's how they fixed Act 60, was a lot of grants. And then, oh, wow, well, we don't have enough money this year. So instead of paying 70% of transportation, we're only going to pay 40 now. Or we're going to pay 10% of your previous year's actual expenditures. And I'd be very concerned that, a city like Burlington may do very well with that. So that would be a good compromise for them, and it wouldn't be so much for us. Go ahead, Mark.
I'll just say that they did discuss categorical grants, and it is not something that they are in favor of. That said, they don't have a final decision on what they are going to lobby for yet. So they are definitely still up in the air about a lot of things. They meet again this Thursday. And then probably, I think they're meeting with their lobbyists this Thursday. So we'll have some more information to report back at the next meeting.
And I know, Rick, you're trying to attend, and Mark, you try to attend too, right? So that we at least see what's going on.
I watched the videos afterwards. I haven't yet attended a live meeting, but I'm going to try for this Thursday.
Okay.
And the videos are all online, Rich, if anybody wants to see them. I mean, I think Mark has we both have access to those. If anybody would like us to share, if you want to sit through a couple-hour video meeting, happy to send those links along to anybody who's interested.
Well, I think Laura doesn't get enough video conferencing time, so maybe just send them to her, and then
We'll shoot those over to you, Laura, okay?
Yeah, and Laura, please write a report for us.
I'll just listen to them in my sleep.
They actually sound better at twice speed. So
I think then, unless anybody feels differently, why don't we'll move that forward. But thank you guys for tracking that for us.
And we have the motion, Rich. I mean, we're ready to make the motion. If there's a consensus among all the other board members that we should jump on with them, I just think we need some direction out of them as to which way they're going to go. I'd hate to hop on this coalition and have it be I'll call it Vermont Urban Coalition.
Okay. No, I think that's good. And Kate and Dwight, do you have any burning desire to make a motion today or move forward? Okay. Let's table that one, guys. And believe me, tabling is good because we've had some good discussions. Let's let it mature a little bit more, and then, let's not be hasty. So, the next thing I have under old business is AOE update and guidance on paying tuition to religious schools. Bill, you sent this to us. This is something that changed with a court case or something. So this is more of an FYI for us.
No, we discussed this at the last meeting, and the board requested that this line item stay on the board agenda so that you can get regular updates. And there has been no update to the what is going on in the court cases or the guidance, but I did share with you what Visbit, our insurance trust attorneys, came up with for a certification form. And Jen Finaldi and Lori O'Hearn have been very diligent and helpful in following the direction of the attorneys, which is to send it to everybody that we pay tuition to, including pre-K. And so Jen and Lori have been very diligent in helping us get those back. And we are also receiving those because we are paying tuition. And so we are completing those and sending those out. So it seems to be a very common occurrence that is happening across the state right now.
Okay. Laura and then Mark.
So I'm not sure if this is what, I think I might have asked for this to stay on the agenda, but
you
maybe
did
not. Okay. So I'm interested in knowing if we are asked to pay tuition to a religious school. So I don't know if you're able
Yeah,
to.
that'll be a much bigger issue because that will involve our attorney and what the board wants us to do when we receive a request such as that.
Okay, so that's not going to go by without the board knowing.
No, absolutely not.
Okay, great.
Mark, you're next, sir.
So with your permission, Rich, I'd like to step down from my seat as a board member and make a statement as a private citizen.
Yes, you can definitely step down and you can definitely make a statement.
Thank you.
On this topic?
Yes, it is on this topic.
Okay.
Absolutely. Let me just pull up my notes. All right. So to start, I am making this as a statement as a private citizen, not as a member of the school board. And I also want to recognize that nothing that I say, nothing I do will in any way change the decisions being handed down and put upon us by both federal and state courts. That said, this is a topic that strikes right at the heart of who we are as a community, a state, and a nation, and I feel obligated to make the following statement. I find it quite hypocritical that the same people who have worked for decades based on their religious beliefs to deny women of access to and funding for medical care, such as an abortion, have the gall to insist that they have the right to divert public funds to their private religious schools. So it's fine to use public money for religious schools, but not for medical care. At the same time, they insist their religious institutions shouldn't, and in fact, quite often aren't, subject to the same rules and laws such as anti-discrimination and labor laws that are everyone else. As someone who went to a religious elementary school, I don't believe anyone can honestly claim that religion doesn't infiltrate every aspect of the school day and extracurricular activities. Something as simple as a student wearing uniforms or religious garb instructors and staff may wear, or religious symbols or homophobic posters lining walls. The beliefs being taught in these schools are everywhere. Think about the words or tone of voice used in teaching evolution, for example. This certification form, while it has been upheld as constitutional by the Supreme Court, is, I believe, worth less than the paper on which it is printed. The Establishment Clause and Free Exercise Clause of the First Amendment to the United States Constitution establishes a right of conscience. Article 3 of the Vermont Constitution recognizes freedom of religion. It states that no one shall be compelled to worship in any manner contrary to their wishes, nor help pay for churches or ministers. No civil right can be denied because of someone's religious beliefs. The state nor any authority can control rights of conscience. In a January 1st, 1802 letter written by Thomas Jefferson, he wrote, "Believing with you that religion is a matter which lies solely between man and his God, that he owes account to none other for his faith or his worship, that the legitimate powers of government reach actions only and not opinions. I contemplate with sovereign reverence that the act of the whole American people, which declared that the legislature should make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state." This letter has been cited in numerous Supreme Court cases upholding the separation of church and state. In 1964, Supreme Court Justice Potter Stewart, referring to pornography, said, "I know it when I see it." Well, in 2021, Mark Bernard Schauber is saying, "I know a violation of the First Amendment separation of church and state when I see it." This country has failed to live up to this necessary tenet of a successful democracy, and in recent decades has come dangerously close to legally giving religion more power over what choices we have than the government itself has. Vermont is now being told, for all intents and purposes, that our Constitution doesn't matter. What matters is how powerful is the religious lobby. My personal religious beliefs aside, I recognize the right of parents to send their children to private religious schools. That's a choice they make with the knowledge that they will be charged tuition by those schools. That's a choice they make because they want their child steeped in the beliefs and moral codes of that religion. I don't recognize the right of those of those who choose to believe in a specific religion's tenets to force me to pay for the propagation of those beliefs. It's for that reason, despite the clear direction being pushed upon us by federal and state courts, that I cannot support the implementation of the AOE guidance. I believe it does a disservice to our students, taxpayers, and our community at large. In conclusion, I realize my statement may be controversial, but it's my responsibility as a citizen and board member to firstly ensure we provide a high-quality education for every student in our district. Secondly, to ensure the best possible return on investment for all of our taxpayers. And I do believe that ROI is how our taxpayers should judge how well we are doing. Third, to listen to my conscience when it's telling me something is very wrong. Thank you. I'm finished, Rich.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Is there any other comments on the guidance on paying tuition to religious schools?
Peter has his hand up and I have a feeling I know what it's for.
Go ahead,
Send me
Peter.
the text. I can't write a better one than
Yeah.
that.
Okay, I think, Peter, you can just summarize it. You don't have to put it in word for word.
Well, send me the text anyway, because I don't want to make any mistakes.
Okay. So Mark, why don't you rejoin the board if you're okay with that?
I will. Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. Is there any other old business that I missed from anybody? Dwight?
So where are we with this in terms of, this document and paying for secondary schools? Is this something we need to vote on, and whether this is appropriate to use? Or
No.
where are-
No, the courts have already decided that. So what Bill wanted us to do, what Bill was doing was he was notifying us that this was a decision that has come down from the higher ups, and that they've got some paperwork they put together that Jennifer and Lori at the schools, the admin people at the individual schools, have to send out to make sure that there's some separation there, that students aren't being, if we're paying tuition, that it isn't, that it meets the requirements that we were given at the last meeting. Remember, we got the write-up at the last meeting?
Yeah.
And Bill, Laura asked that it be left on the agenda, so she wants to know if it does wind up happening that anybody gets turned down because it's a religious school. I know in Dover, we have in the past had this come up And there had, I think actually Bill may have been our administrator. We were, we told the school that, yeah, we could pay tuition. This was what, the state required of us to do to allow us to pay tuition. And then I don't think it ever went anywhere. So that was it. They're just giving us information, keeping us informed. We don't have to take any action.
I thought it hadn't been determined by the courts yet, that this is just a recommendation of our attorney to go do this, to go down this path. Has something been decided in the courts?
It has not been decided in the Vermont court. It has been filed in the Vermont court. So
Yeah.
you're both correct. Rich is correct in that there have been some national decisions that the current Vermont court is looking at. I think that what I would pledge to you, the board, is that we will not pay tuition without bringing that request forward to the board, because a lawsuit decision has not been determined yet by the Vermont court. But there will be a time coming up in the future where you as a board are going to have that discussion, because according to the AOE, it is the local school board's decision whether they are going to pay the tuition or whether they are not. So
That's sorry, Rich.
Go ahead, Dwight.
Oh, no, and what did you say? It's a local decision. Is this following the court decision? Then it becomes a local decision, or?
Nope. It is. That's why the AOE didn't give guidance that said you must pay. They just gave us guidance, because every individual school district board will have to decide based on where the lawsuits are at the time, their attorney's advice, whether you are going to pay tuition to a school that previously, under the 1999 Chittenden versus Vermont decision, nobody has been paying tuition to religious schools.
Then why is it they're recommending we pay this now, even though
they're not recommending we pay it?
Oh, I thought that's what you said at the last meeting was, all right.
No, they're recommending that we get certification from our current tuition payments.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody that asks us to pay tuition, that we ask them to attest that they are not using the funds that are being provided for tuition for religious purposes. But that will still come back to a board deciding, if you receive that certification, what do you guys want to do? It will be a board decision.
Okay, thank you.
There really is no reason to leave this on there, because we will just, if there's a decision that comes down, the AOE will send a letter out and you'll let us know. And if we have to vote on this, you'll let us know. So really,
that's all I wanted to know, is where we were at. Thank you.
So is there any real reason to leave it on there?
The direction I'm getting from the board is do not approve any tuition to any school that cannot certify that they are separating the funds from religious or not, or if there is any question at all. There's no time commitment that we could not bring it forth to the board. We could have a special meeting. What I'm hearing from the board is, Bill, do not unilaterally just agree to pay tuition if it is not something that has been happened in the past through a secular school.
Okay, so hang on a second, because that's a little different. Laura and Mark and Dwight, let me get to you in a second. Let me ask just one clarifying question, Bill. If I have my child that I want to have tuition to a school, we've done these before where we have a hearing and then the school board votes not to do it, their appeal is to the state of Vermont, isn't it?
It is, well, this is a whole new world, man. So I don't know. I would definitely engage our attorney's advice before we did anything, before we said yes, before we said no. If a request comes that is not to a public school or an approved independent school that we are affirmed is not part of a religious institution, then it's going to come before you guys and have a discussion.
But at least in Dover, and Rick, I don't know, you can answer for Wardsboro. Basically, in the past, we've only said if it's not an approved school, we're not going to pay it. We've had the people from out in Colorado want to approve a certain school, and we said no. All you got to do is get it approved. So
That is correct. You get it approved by the governing institution. So they could be in Switzerland, and you could have the Switzerland Board of Education, which is deemed appropriate for an approved independent school. There's a list of approved independent schools, but those are just the ones that exist in Vermont. Everything else has to be approved by the governing institution. The difference is for the last 21 years, anything associated with a religious institution has been denied. And what the guidance we're getting now is you can't unilaterally deny that.
no, that's no different than what we were told when we had the people wanting to attend a school in Bennington. We were told that we would need to get information from the school to determine how much was their ability not to be involved in all the religious stuff. Yeah,
No,
Laura.
it's exactly what happened. We just didn't have the sheet. They could not attest that it wasn't separate. And the guidance we got from the AOE was then you don't have to pay it. The guidance has now changed.
Okay. So Laura, Mark, and Dwight.
So I think we're missing a key piece here. Okay, so the Supreme Court ruling said that, and I'm looking at it, that states are not required to subsidize private education. But if they opt to do so, they cannot exclude religious schools from receiving those funds simply because they are religious. So the situation here in Vermont is because we have choice in some districts. I think that opens it up to the entire, it may open it up either to the entire state, but at least to the choice districts. And there is a lawsuit that is already working its way through. And I have a prediction about how long it's going to take for school choice to end.
Mark, and then Dwight.
So Laura's correct. And according to the AOE, it doesn't just apply to choice districts, it applies to all districts. As of the end of last week, things may have changed because I believe there was another hearing, but the case that's working its way through the state, a single, I believe, appellate judge had issued a, all of a sudden I've lost the word, an injunction, which essentially required schools to pay the tuition to private religious schools. It put an injunction on the lawsuit that's trying to stop that from happening, from requiring that to happen. So it's my understanding that we actually don't have a choice at this point in time. We may in a week, we may in a month, but at this point, I don't think that we have a legal choice. I could be wrong. I'm not a lawyer, but that's my understanding.
Did you sleep at a Holiday Inn Express last night, though?
The last 2 nights.
Well, there you go. So you could be. Dwight, and then Amelia.
I just wanted to just one more clarification from Bill. So, if someone recommends funding for a religious school, you're going to come back to the board. If they fill out this form, is that you're still going to come back to us before those funds are granted? Is that correct, or is that the
yeah?
Okay.
Yeah.
So before any funds,
I'm not hanging out on my own, man.
Well, I know. Yeah, I thought you mentioned that if they fill this form out, that would be acceptable. And I just want to make sure it also needs board approval.
Okay. So Amelia, and then Mark.
Hi. I've been doing a lot of reading on this case and researching it. And I believe part of the reason that you guys need this form, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I figured I'd just throw this out, is that in the 1999 case for Chittenden County, they had said that they could pay to religious schools if there was a way to prove that the funds weren't going to religious schools. So I believe that's why there's a form needed now. I don't know if that helps or not. Just wanted to throw it out. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that's the one that we had presented to us a while ago, Bill. I think you were the admin, but that they had to be able to show that there wasn't religious study wasn't part of the curriculum or wasn't part of that, and that's how we were able on that one to not approve it because they couldn't say that.
That is all pre the Montana case, the recent case that early college and dual enrollment in county, and the current case that's rolling through Vermont. So yes, we did essentially what the form is asking people to do. What I'm telling the board is that if anybody requests our school district to pay tuition to any school that even resembles something new for us to consider, I will not commit for the board to discuss.
Okay, so Mark, you go ahead. Amelia, are you still want to say something else, or did you just not?
No, I'm good. I'll put my hand down.
Excuse me,
Sorry.
but Bill broke up, and that's a crucial statement. The last thing he said.
The last thing that Bill said is that if anything new comes in a request, I'm going to be very deliberate about bringing it forth to the board before committing yay or nay.
Thank you. Clear.
Okay, Mark.
So just 2 points of slight clarification. It is also my understanding that that the case that's making its way through the state courts now is in regard to approved schools, not unapproved schools. So the religious school would have to have already been an approved school or become an approved school. And in regards to the certification, Amelia's right. The certification concept is one, and I'd have to look the case citation up, but is one that has already been approved by the Supreme Court of the United States as enough to that if a school just signs a paper saying money you're sending us won't go towards religious education, that is enough to make it okay to pay that school the tuition.
And I guess what I'm saying is, even if we get that back, I'm calling the attorney and I'm bringing it forth to the board. I'm not going to make that call independently.
I appreciate that, Bill. I actually wasn't I wasn't making that statement because of what you had said.
Okay, so there's no action required on our part. So is my take on this correct, Bill?
That is correct.
Okay. It was a very roused, very robust discussion. It was a good debate. It would be a good debate at a town meeting or a school district meeting, but we're not having that right now. So if we're all set to move on, if there's no other no other old business from anybody, excuse me. Signs for school buildings, discussion, possible action. This was brought up at the last meeting, and I think Matt and Tammy were going to look into this or bring something back, or who was the one who brought this up? Mark.
Yeah, I just asked if it would possible for Matt and Tammy to discuss having our students design new signs that would be similar for both schools. Just one says IB, one says STEAM, and because they're both schools are on main roads, more so Wardsboro, but both schools, that they are good advertising.
Go ahead, Matt or Tammy. Matt.
Go ahead, Matt. I can chime in.
Yeah, so Tammy and I talked about it this week. I haven't moved on anything, but we thought maybe we could involve students in a design process, and then maybe bring something to a professional designer or somebody who understands how to make signs, and have them work that idea into something that would look nice out on the end of the road. Is that about right?
Yeah, I think it's, it's a similar discussion to the website, right? The signs need updating, just like our website needs updating. I think it would be great to get student involvement. I don't know that the final design would be from students. Maybe we could get the concept from them and then take that to a designer. I would suggest, like Matt said, hiring a professional based on the concept, just to produce a quality product. It's something that's probably going to be pretty permanent. I know the school sign that's up now has been there for many, many years. And just also reminding us all that it's not currently in the FY22 budget. So we would look to the board for direction on funding it. I'm sure it would probably cost about $5,000 plus for each school, I would guess.
Okay, so how do we move this forward? We're still looking for an art teacher too, aren't we?
Yeah, and that was another idea that we tossed around, was maybe it's something that we integrate into art if we ever do find that perfect candidate.
What about like Dover used to do with an artist in resident type thing? Maybe we can get a sign maker to come in and do some, do some stuff with the students on how signs are made and what goes into designing a sign. And maybe that could be kind of a part of an art class for the remainder of the year, and then see what we come up with.
Yeah, I don't know any sign makers, so maybe if anybody knows any, they can send them our way. At the moment, we're not having people, artists in residence, come into the building or anything like that because of the limitations of COVID. But maybe once that's done and we can let people back in the building again, which would be nice, we could do something like that.
Matt, I will send you the name of a guy we use over here. He does a lot of stuff in the Valley.
Great.
And I don't know if it's anything he'd have any interest in, but maybe you could at least have a conversation with him. So
might be helpful to know what, if you have any specifics you would like on the signs or information besides the name of the school. So a little direction from the board might be helpful as well.
So then, Mark, I'll get to you in one sec. Then maybe too, what we can do then is we'll move this over to old business, and we'll bring that up for a more thorough discussion at the next meeting. And then, maybe Matt, you and I can hook up with the sign guy and get some input from him. And also, Tammy, we could, see what the estimate is if you're really close on that. And, maybe we can adjust that too. And then we still have some budget meetings coming up if it's something we want to put in. Mark, sir.
So I imagine, I know there are some, I imagine there are probably more than just a handful of residents of Dover and Wardsboro who are talented with Adobe Illustrator or similar, who may be willing to volunteer some time to work with the ideas that the students put forward, which would help reduce the overall cost. My thought on what should be on the sign would just be, River Valley's Unified School District, Wardsboro School or Dover School, IB or STEAM, with a logo for those specialties, because those are really the selling features of each school. So those would be my thoughts, and maybe at the bottom, established whatever year the schools were originally established.
Okay, but let's put it on the agenda, Peter, for the next meeting. if you just make a note in the minutes and Bill, and it'd be really funny that we get each board member to submit their artistic skills and see. Kate, don't give me a look like that. I see. I think that's the stuff we should have. But, any suggestions, we'll take maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes next meeting, and I think move that forward. I think that's a really good project and a really good idea. And maybe we'll get a business or a town or something to donate some funds to getting a sign out there. So is everybody good with that? Any other thoughts or comments? And Kate, that's a beautiful painting behind you. You did really good. I'm very proud of you.
My daughter is part of an excellent education system and has had some great instruction.
Oh, Tammy's shaking her head with me.
What system is that?
Part of the River Valley Unified School District at the Wardsboro campus.
I was joking.
I'd like to see the one that's over your right-hand shoulder, though. That looks like, that's very interesting. It's very colorful. Yeah, that's kind of neat. If we're all set, then I think our next meeting is February 22nd at 6 p.m. Same bat channel, same all that other bat stuff. Go ahead, Mark.
Policy committee's meeting Friday, 9 a.m. the 12th. The agenda is going to go out tomorrow.
Okay, you can't meet then. That's a Chinese New Year. It's a holiday. I don't know.
Okay, we'll meet Saturday instead.
Okay, cool. No holiday on Saturday. Sunday's Valentine's Day, though. So make sure you get all your sweethearts red roses, and they're going to go fast. Bill, Matt, or Tammy, no executive session stuff for you, just the superintendent evaluation?
Hey, Rich.
Yes.
I'm all good.
Well, go ahead, Matt, and then we'll get Bill.
I just wanted to make a note. Last meeting, we talked about that, and I just want to make a note that the principals weren't requested to have those in until March 1st. And
Right.
I know you were talking about doing something. I just wanted to make sure that, that was noted.
Yeah, no, March 1st is a deadline. I just don't want to, we're doing ours now because next meeting, we're going to have just a general meeting. There won't be a lot of budget stuff. And I thought this would be a good time to get this done. And these are actually going to get tabulated now electronically. I don't have to sit there and do it. So it's a lot easier, I hope. We'll see. See how my computer skills are. Bill, sir.
Oh, I've got nothing. I'm good.
Oh, okay. So listen, Rich and Peter, we're going to come out of executive session at some point, and all we're going to do is make a motion to adjourn. We're going to complete a superintendent evaluation, but it's nothing we vote on or anything. So I don't know if you guys want to get booted by Mark to the waiting room, or if you want to just take off and we'll send it to you. I guess, Mark, you would just record it again after we come out, and then you could send that recording to Rich, or I don't know how this all works.
Save some money and boot out.
I would just assume we put in the waiting room and then come back when you guys come back.
Okay. Mark, can you do that?
Yep.
And
Yep.
you have control, right?
I have control. I don't currently have control of recording, but I think that will be handed to me as soon as Rich is in the waiting room.
Okay, so can I entertain a motion to move into executive session to complete the superintendent evaluation? See you, Matt. Bye, Tammy. Bye, Jen.
I'll make the motion to go into executive session at 8:04 p.m.
And do I have a second? Go ahead, Mark. Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 The ayes appear to have it.
Aye.
The ayes have it. See you, Pete. Mark, we're recording?
We are recording, yes.
Okay, Rick, you all set for us to move forward?
Am I all
Okay,
set for
so
what?
9:41, we came out of executive session. We completed the superintendent evaluation, which we will submit. I will submit on behalf of our board electronically through my Google Doc form.
Oh my God, I'm so proud of you. Ooh,
Wow.
Yeah, it probably isn't going to work. I'm probably going to make somebody else do it. But I saw my flip phone, Laura. Mark,
Yes.
jump on Laura's. Make the motion before Laura.
Okay. What? Whatever it's called. The end of the
I'd
meeting.
like to make a motion to adjourn at 9:44 PM.
Thank you, Rick.
Yes,
Kate,
Rick.
Kate seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Hi.
All right.